welcome to our first Omani talk in partnership with British Omani Society and Wild Frontiers. So there's a mix of people here who are actually members of the British Omani Society and former or past Wild Frontiers customers. So welcome, thank you very much. There's an amazingly strong relationship between the UK and Oman, and that's been going on for quite a few years now. We're very proud of that, and the Sultan of Oman, he wants to foster and preserve relationships going forward with the UK. And a lot of that is about trying to get people out to Oman, to experience Oman. And for me, it's a magical place, and it's a true part of Arabia. We've seen a lot of what's going on in the Middle East. The people are so humble in Oman. I think hopefully tonight you're going to learn a little bit more about Oman and its people, and you'll suddenly realise what an amazing place. You might not have heard too much about it. I hope you have heard about it, but hopefully it will entice you to actually travel. And a few of the members here get the chance to speak to many of the members who worked or travelled a lot to Oman, so please do have a chat to them. The British Omani Society is actually a membership organisation, so if you would like to join them, please feel free to speak to the team or go onto their websites. Wild Frontiers, our other partner tonight, got Mark to my left-hand side, and a few of the team here as well. Been established tour operator now for 25 years. sorry, and have been selling Oman for 20 of those years. They're a respected and trusted partner of ours, so I'm very, very pleased to have the team here and yourselves here. I think there's about 70 of us. I think how many people we've got online now, roughly? Going to have a look. As I said to you before, it's about 110 a few minutes ago. I'm sure that has actually gone up. I should introduce myself. You're probably wondering who I am. My name is Rob Wilson. I work on behalf of the Oman Ministry of Heritage and Tourism in the UK. I've got my colleague Natasha at the back of the room as well. You'll probably guess I've got an amazing passion for Oman. I've worked for Oman for the last 5 years. My family travel out to Oman. It's one of those places we love. The first thing we love when we step off the aircraft is actually the people. They are so friendly. They invite you into your house for coffee. They want to sit to you. They want to actually talk to you, which is very unusual in a country nowadays. But it's not just about the people. Fjords up in that. The actual Arabian fjords are absolutely stunning. The dramatic peaks, the Jabal Charms, the shearing canyons. You've got the tropical beaches, thousands of kilometers of beaches, those Indian Ocean beaches, truly, truly amazing. And the desert experiences, which Mark is going to talk about just in a few moments. It really is truly a magical Arabia. I'm talking to Mark to my left. He is an amazing, words can't explain Mark to Oman. He's a true friend of Oman. It's Mark Evans, MBE, ex-Outward Bound Executive Director. He's an explorer. He's a lover of travel. He's just passionate about Oman, traveling Oman. And I think that will come across today. He's an expedition leader. He's got more expeditions coming up next year, but he's done lots in Oman, and that's actually what he's going to talk about tonight. And he's going to talk about the empty quarter. And he's got some amazing stories. I could listen to him all night, but I think I'm not too sure we've only got about half an hour with you, so we'll keep him going. Yes, so we can tell you a little bit more about his adventures, and then we can pass over to Mark Leatherman from Wild Frontiers, and he's going to talk a little bit more about Oman, the history of Oman, and also talk about the programme that Wild Frontiers actually offered to Oman. Hopefully that will entice you to travel to the Sultan of Oman. It's like I say, it's a truly amazing place. And really to try and entice you, we're going to run a quick 3-minute video, just to get the room going. And yes, and then I'll hand over to Mark to talk to you a little bit more. A little bit of a whirring session. So if it's playing up a little bit, we might be able to do so a little bit later.
I can try refreshing.
Yeah, we'll try to refresh. But technology always gets you on the night. So what we'll actually do then, we'll try that later on. What we'll actually do, I shouldn't run off actually, so I do apologise because we've got everyone on Zoom and I've run off. So what I'm actually going to pass you over to Mark Evans, and he's actually going to talk to you now about his experience. Expedition leader, amazing adventurer, and he's going to tell you about the stories from his travels in the empty quarter. I think what we'll try and do after Mark's actually spoken, I think we'll try the video again then. Okay, so Mark, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I think so, if it works.
Yeah, we should be back. I think Pat will be back. Oh,
Really?
brilliant.
Thanks very much, Rob. And thank you, British Omani Society, for turning the temperature up to the Oman levels that they're during. So I'm going to talk to you more about the enterprise. I do not work for the Ministry of Tourism. I do not work for any organisation. What I say to you tonight, I say to you as someone who's been lucky enough to live in Oman for 18 years. And it's a country that has had a profound impact on me. And if I'm slightly chipper, it's because at 06:30 tomorrow morning I'm at Heathrow getting on a plane to Muscat, where I will get in my 110 Land Rover and I will go out with my roof test into the desert. So this time tomorrow night I will be in the desert, which is where I normally spend my time. My two Omani dogs, rescue dogs, are shivering away in Inverness, where I left this morning. They won't be with me, sadly, but Oman is the most extraordinary place. And I've lived in the Middle East for 25 years, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and 18 of those 25 have been in Oman. There's a reason for that. It really is the jewel of Arabia. Geographically, for those of you that don't know a lot about it, it is slightly bigger than the UK, but whilst we have a population of almost 70 million, Oman has a population just short of 5 million. So imagine UK with 5 million people. In other words, you step out of London and there's absolutely nobody. Wild is the word that appears in Wild Frontiers, and Oman is full of wild places and wild frontiers. To the north, we have the mountains. Tectonically, I'm an ex-geographer, so just brace yourself here. Oman is drifting towards Iran. We have little tiny earthquakes in the north of Sandam, but not very much. Mountains of the Western Hajar Mountains go up to 10,000 feet. So the Jebel Count, the mountain of the sun, goes up to 10,000 feet. The capital, Muscat, which is where you can fly directly into, which is what I'm doing tomorrow from London, a 7-hour flight. And then the second city, Salalah, down south on the border with Yemen. And as Rob rightly said, huge expanses of coastline. And in between, it was Wilfrid Thesiger, I think, that said, the harder the life, the finer the person. And I think if any of you spent any time in Arabia, you will realize just how fine those people are. And a friend of mine who used to work at the Omani embassy here was a poet and an artist. And many years ago, he got posted onto Ottawa in Canada. And he sent me a Christmas card that he painted. And the Christmas card was a little Inuit standing outside his igloo at the top. And underneath that, a Bedouin standing outside his tent. And inside that was a little poem that he wrote about the similarities between the people of the north and the people of the desert. And at first glance, you might think they have nothing in common, but actually, they do. They are both people that live on the edge of human tolerance and are much the finer for it. The hospitality you find in the northern latitudes is exactly the same as you will find in the desert. I have locked my door in 18 years ago. It's one of the safest places I've ever been. And the hospitality that you receive, whether you're in Oman or in Greenland or the Northwest Passage, is quite extraordinary. It's sometimes even overwhelming if you try to have a bit of time to yourself. If you read Thesiger's book, Arabian Sands, he liked nothing more than sitting on top of the sand dune writing his diary every night, trying to find a bit of quiet. But his Arab companions could never understand why he would want to leave the fireplace and miss out on the conversations. I employ 45 Omanis in Muscat. They are the most fantastic people. Demographically, Oman is the inverse of the UK. 60% of the population of Oman are under 30 years old. So it's a hugely youthful population. When His Majesty Sultan Qaboos passed away a couple of years ago, none of my staff can remember any other leader. The same as the Queen was passing away. Yeah. What makes Oman, the Omani people so different and so special? It's the maritime heritage. The second language in my office in Muscat is not English, it's Swahili. And the reason for that is the monsoon. And if you look at the old Omani Empire, the red areas coming down here towards Zanzibar, why are there mosques in Mombasa and Dar es Salaam? It's because of the Omani traders that were forever going north and south along the coast. And so Swahili, very important language in Oman. And going east, this boat, the Jewel of Muscat, was reconstructed from a boat found under the sand. It was sailed east, and it now sits in a museum in Singapore. So the Omanis have been reaching out and open to different cultures, different perspectives, different points of view for many, many centuries. Different to the Arabs further north, who are a bit more insular and a bit more suspicious of people with different ideas. Very pro-British, as Rob said. The British royal family frequent visitors to the Sultanate. This was just before COVID, December 2019. If I recall, in some mountains, you can get an idea of the mountains there. This is literally 40 minutes out from the airport. It's a beautiful place called Wadi Arbaeen. It's to the east of Muscat. A big British community, a resident community, 4,000 to 5,000. I checked in with Rachel at the MC yesterday. Currently, they think about 4,000 to 5,000 British people live in Oman. And you can even get chocolate honeymoons. That is not a sign of civilization, which I don't know what is. The British School Muscat has 1,000 students there, 1,000 British students studying away for their GCSEs and their A-levels. But really, much of my time in Oman has been beyond Muscat, the capital city. I love it. In Muscat, you have everything that you would want in a capital city. Beautiful opera house, cinema, wonderful restaurants, great hotels. But within 40 minutes, you're in the most extraordinary landscapes. The mountains that are so high that whilst Muscat swelters in 40 degrees, you can grow roses, you can grow pomegranates. The oldest living thing in Oman, other than myself, the juniper tree, which appear above 1,800 meters on Jebel Aktar. The oldest one, some of the studies that Nigel Windsor and the Earthwatch team did, over 1,000 years old, and one olive trees. And this is 2 hours from the airport and Muscat. Ancient water courses that carry water with the Faraj, carry water from areas of relative plenty to areas of relative need. I spent a lot of my time, I lived just west of Inverness, so for many years I've had the perfect commute between Beaulieu, just to the west of Inverness, and Muscat. I'm very, very lucky. I spent most of my time in a kayak on the west coast of Scotland. So I think Neil's got a special prize tonight for anyone who can name the mountains in the background there. I know we've got a room for the travellers. What island are we looking at there?
Sure.
Not bad, not far away.
Is it Jura?
It's not Jura. It's that's Run.
Yeah.
So we're sitting on the west side of the Isle of Egg. So sea kayaking, absolutely fantastic way to explore. So about 18 years ago, what I did was that I kayaked all the way around the entire coast of Oman. No one had ever done it. So I started at the very top where it nearly touches Iran, and I ended up down on the border with Yemen. A fantastic journey with all sorts of challenges, but as always, great support. Every day doing about 30, 40 kilometers, sleeping on the beach. 2 nights out of 3, I could meet the support team. Probably 1 night in 3, I'd have to sleep on the beach myself. Past places where they still build wooden dhows, the original Omani sailing ship. Sadly, timed it badly. There was a tsunami struck Southeast Asia. You can probably work out the year that I did this journey now. So some pretty wild seas, especially when you turn the corner trying to land in surf on the Indian Ocean. It's like sticking your head in a washing machine, really. But great fun. And working our way south towards the southern city of Salalah. And what you notice is, if I just flick back to that, after the kayaking around Oman, I kayaked around Qatar, which is the finger up there, and then a little island called Bahrain. And what I realized was the sea further north is absolutely sterile and dead. And it just drove me to really think as to the riches that Oman has in terms of its marine wildlife. Excellent. 4 species of turtles call Oman their home, but they're under threat. They're under pressure. The numbers are decreasing pretty rapidly. A resident population of humpback whales. Most humpback whales migrate from warm water to the cold water. In Oman, the cold water comes to them in the summer with the monsoon, so they don't have to migrate. And the journey ended after it took me 55 days. I ended near the border with Yemen. This is about the last road sign that you see as you approach, and this is the coastline. It's utterly spectacular, absolutely spectacular. Camels that swim in the sea. I don't know if you've ever seen camels that swim in the sea. The fastest moving thing in Dalkut, which is the final village before you reach the Yemeni border, is that fig tree, which is growing out of someone's wall. Not a lot happens in Dalkut very quickly. A crashed Russian helicopter from the Yemen conflict when someone fled, and this was the first possible place that they could land of safety. And I watched this helicopter fuselage decay over decades, really, and possibly the most remote branch of HSBC. But a joy of that journey, we were journeying, as always, with a purpose. We wanted to use it to raise money for there's an incredible Omani lady called Yusra Rawahi, who's third-time breast cancer survivor, and we raised, by the publication of a book, over £100,000, which went to buying Oman's first mobile screening clinic. It was able to go into the more remote villages for people to get early diagnosis of that. A couple of years later, a much bigger journey, 80 days this time, from Salalah in the south, all along the coast. So camping on the beach pretty much every day, 80 days with camels, ending by rowing a traditional Omani sailing craft called the Badan. And we arrived on the beach east of Muscat. Now, so Neil's prize didn't go because no one got the island in Scotland. But can anyone work out in this photograph? Lawrence. The person on the right. Person on the right. Yeah, left is definitely Lawrence River. On the right, if you're a member of the Explorers Club in New York, which, other than the Royal Geographical Society here in London, is the home of exploration, you will attend an annual dinner called the Lowell Thomas Dinner. The Lowell Thomas Awards. Lowell Thomas went into Arabia about 1917, 1918, when Lawrence was doing his stuff, and his black and white footage, he was a filmmaker, and his black and white footage really played all around the world and got the world very excited about this point of the world that we now call Arabia. And at the time, the Explorers Club had said that the empty quarter, other than Antarctica, is the greatest expanse of unexplored territory that remains. And so, unsurprisingly, it was someone British who went out there to try and explore it. And most people think, if you wander down the street, across the street, into Waterston, ask for a book on desert exploration, they will say, this is the classic book. And they're right. Beautiful writing, great photography, but Russell was not the first. Someone beat him by 15 years. And if anyone here from Bristol? I don't want to say it, but a chap from Bristol beat it. But Thesiger, an extraordinary man, on the left in his pomp as a desert explorer, on the right a year before he passed away when I met him at his retirement home. And I think there's someone in the audience here who actually read the eulogy at Wilfrid Thesiger's funeral. So we're very blessed to have that person here tonight. It won't take you long, no prizes for spotting Bertrand Thomas in this lineup here. This is the government of Oman in 1926. Thomas was sent south by Gertrude Bell to act as an advisor to the Sultan of Oman. And in his mind, he had the dream of being the first European to cross the biggest sand desert on earth. No one had done it. It was a great unconquered challenge. And the red line you see going from Salalah in the south all the way north to Doha in Qatar is the journey that he made in 1931, which was an extraordinary journey. This is a little bit of movie. He actually carried in 1931 a cine camera with him. So have a look at this. This is some of the earliest moving footages of Southern Arabia. It's a silent set. So Thomas crossed that desert. It took him 53 days to cross from Salalah to Dover. And when he reached Dover, when the World Cup was there, was it last year? I think there were a couple of little mud brick huts there in February 1931 when he arrived. An extraordinary, it was front page news all around the world. Obviously, he did it with camels and he relied on Bedouin and their local knowledge of water holes. Otherwise, he would not have survived. The empty quarter is emptier today than it has ever been. If Thomas and Thesiger were to try and do their journeys today in the way that they did them, they wouldn't be able to. Because the Bedouin, with all that knowledge, have migrated to the periphery, where you have electricity, air conditioning, and blacktop roads. So the empty quarter, if you like wilderness, is more of a wilderness than it has ever been. Finding camels to do an expedition is also incredibly difficult. These camels are camels. 4 of them had to undergo a month's worth of boot camp before we even started our journey. Because every day they're having to walk 30, 40 miles. Camels these days are stationary, static animals. The fodder and the water is brought to them by their ever-loving Bedouin owners. This is Thesiger on the left when he arrived in Arabia. He arrived in Oman under the guise of trying to find a breeding ground, the breeding grounds of the desert locusts. That was his card to get in. And like every explorer, he needed a provider, a wild frontiers. And on the right there, you see Sheikh Saleh bin Khalid, a young Dofari man, relatively young Dofari man, who was to act as his guide across the empty quarter. And I just want to go back to Sheikh Saleh because you can see his khanjar is just hidden. That very famous Omani dagger is hidden by his hands. And we retraced this journey. So 7 years ago, we were the first people in 85 years to retrace that journey across the empty quarter. It took us 49 days. On the way, we were met by a descendant of Sheikh Saleh who showed us the original khanjar that is in that photo. It's still a family heirloom, which is an extraordinary thing. But if you're a photographer, wildlife, landscape, nature, however you want to define it, this is utter paradise. Not a footprint, zero light pollution, not a bit of plastic. It's absolute paradise. And even if there are footprints, the wind will erase them during the day, and the next day you start off with a blank canvas. It's absolute heaven. And we can look back at Thomas's photographs. He also had a camera, and then he took some of these photographs. Anyone, any idea of what's going on here? This is in Dhofar, the southern region of Oman.
It's really got lots of cattle.
It is. There's lots of cattle. Well, what's he got in his hand, do you think? What's the chap got in his hand? Burning stuff? Yeah. What might he be burning?
It's
incense. Yeah, buckwheat frankincense. He's burning frankincense to get rid of the jinn. The word jinn has its root in jinn, the evil spirits. So he's trying to get rid of the evil spirits so that his cattle may be happy and healthy. The patron of our expedition was Prince Charles and now King Charles, and very strong interest in the Arab world, as you know. So we were very fortunate to meet him. He wrote the foreword for our book. There's about 10 copies of these. If you're struggling to get something for the person you love for Christmas, these are on sale tonight. Very, very reasonable rates. But it was Prince Charles's great-grandfather that presented Bertram Thomas with his Founders Medal from the Royal Geographical Society many years ago. And these are the many medals that were pinned on Thomas's chest when he became the first European to cross that desert. The RGS, you'll notice David Livingstone here, that's the medal of the Royal Scottish Geographical Society, and this is the one awarded by the Royal Geographical Society here in London. The RGS, Nigel Windsor here at the front, the Royal Geographical Society, our own society, not 20 minutes walk from here, undertook the most intensive study of any desert on the planet in the mid-1980s, the Wahiba Sands Project. Top scientists from the UK going out to Oman, supported by His Majesty the Sultan, undertaking this intensive survey of these sand dunes that, like the mountain I showed you earlier, within 2 hours of getting off the plane in Muscat, you can be here in the Wahiba Sands and the Sharkia Sands. An extraordinary place, not as big as the empty quarter, but very accessible and still very, very wild. And there's even an award if you're a scholar. The RGS gives out an award every year really, for people adding to our knowledge and understanding of Arabia through the Thesiger Oman Fellowship. This man we've already seen, T. Lawrence. If you've ever read his book, Seven Pillars of Wisdom, I'm told it was the most read book in the Iraq War because all of a sudden people learned they needed to understand the tribal interconnections between the Arab world, if they were going to try and make sense of everything. This was the most popular book that was read. And in it, he refers to this. Now, if you do go to Oman, which I hope you do, it'll be this moment that probably sticks in your memory more than anything. When you're sitting around that fire in the desert with that canopy of stars above you, and that total silence. There will be no signal on your mobile phone, hopefully. It's just great to step out and detox and disconnect. Lawrence referred to this as the University of the Desert. Doesn't matter if you're the most illiterate shepherd or goat herder. Around this fire, you can resolve pretty much anything that you wanted to. And because Oman, and the reason that fits, the reason I've thrown that in there is because Oman, living there for 18 years like I have, it's like being in Switzerland. You know, a foreign policy of non-intervention in other countries' affairs. How better would the world be if every country did that? So it seems the perfect place to host something that we've called for about 12 years now, the University of the Desert Connecting Cultures, where we take young leaders, young emerging social leaders who will influence others in the future from the Arab world, from the Western world. We'll have a young American sitting next to a young Yemeni, sitting next to a young Brit, sitting next to a young Iraqi, and for 5 days, overnight, no mobile phone, 4 camels, 18 people. Fantastic. Absolutely, a really powerful educational thing, recognized by UNESCO and the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations in New York. All this is happening in Oman because it absolutely embodies Oman's national foreign policy. It's a great place to step out, step back and sit down and think and reflect and to put everything in perspective. Great place for art, a great place for ornithology. And the final prize tonight, because I've only got a couple of minutes, can anyone recognize this man? This photograph was taken 5 minutes from the front door where we're sitting right now. This was the last photograph of this man taken alive. Okay, if I mention the name Philby, Kim Philby, that's his dad. Okay, and Dad, this is just outside the Athenaeum Club, looking up towards Piccadilly Circus. This is the last photograph of him. The next day, at the age of 71, he got in a car and drove from London to Beirut. And he didn't use Wild Frontiers to talk that all and there his son Kim was waiting for him, and he sadly passed away. And it's very so. The most recent expedition I've done hasn't touched Oman. It's been across Saudi Arabia from east to west, following in father's footsteps, in Abdullah Fudi's footsteps, from Al-Ghair in the east to Jeddah in the west. A fantastic journey. Philby converted to Islam. He spent decades of his life living there, very different to Thesiger and Thomas. They came and went. Their time in Arabia was very short. Philby devoted his entire life really to time in Oman. But the reason I put this in there was because one thing that Philby's Bedouin companions wanted to see was this mythical Atlantis of the sands. There was a place that supposedly, and it's mentioned in the Quran, grew so rich and so wealthy that it was struck down by bird and all of its inhabitants were killed. And it was called, the Bedouin wanted to take Philby here. They'd seen something in the sand there that they wanted to see. The sand had turned black, there were lumps of metal in the ground, there were huge holes everywhere. When Philby actually visited it, we found out that there was actually a meteorite crater. We visited it in January this year. And the actual location, we think, of that fabled city is further south in Oman, called Buat. And about an hour's drive north of Salalah, the second city. And if you visit Oman, you'll see very much why it could potentially have been that place and why it makes sense. The person that discovered it is this man. I'm not going to give you any prizes for this man, Britain's most famous living explorer, so ran fought in Oman in the Dauphin conflict in the 70s and went back to discover the lost city of Uber. We'll just jump over a couple of it. We did podcasts on our journey across Arabia. If you are interested in Arabia, this QR code is on the table. That's scattered around over there. Use your phone and scan it from the table tops later on, and that will give you access to about half a dozen podcasts that have been downloaded 10,000 times. And those podcasts cover my journey from east to west across Arabia. I'm just going to finish off by talking about our next expedition, which is going to be entirely in Oman. We're going to be launching it at the Royal Geographical Society in November next year, so a year from now. The patron, we hope, will be His Royal Highness Prince William and the Crown Prince of Oman, His Highness the Yazid. And again, we're following our friend from Bristol, who before he crossed that great desert in 1930, made a journey down the coast. He published a book called Arabia Felix. Felix from felicitations, the welcoming, the bountiful. It's a fantastic book. And when you look at it, you see that he did a journey all the way down the coast. And when I look at that journey today, we have his old photographs, we have his cine camera footage from 1928. But when I look at that and superimpose that on modern Oman today, it connects a lot of Oman's biodiversity hotspots. And Oman, we call it the jewel of Arabia for a reason. It's not just the people, it's the place. It is absolutely spectacular in terms of its biodiversity. These incredible falcons, the sooty falcon, that migrate from Madagascar just to Oman, to nest on the islands of Oman every summer, and then migrate back down the east coast of Africa. Go to Madagascar, you'll find them sitting on photograph lines like starlings do here in Britain. Extraordinary birds, thousands of tourists, but they're under threat. Going down the coast, mangroves. I'm going to hold this up. I think Nigel's going to talk, if you're interested in natural history in Oman, the Royal Geographical Society will be hosting a big lecture in January,
6th of December.
6th of December. Nigel will talk about that at the end, I think. Mangroves, very important in terms of biodiversity. On the edge of these mangroves, beyond those, you can see some sand flats. We'll be visiting those as well as we do our journey, because those sand flats have just been recognised and protected under the Ramsar Convention. They are internationally important. 500,000 wading birds using it in the pit stop to refuel. Quite spectacular. And there's nobody there other than some Omani and Dutch ornithologists who come out every year to do a census. The fantastic place. So I'm talking about Dar al Hikman, which is just here. So our journey that we're going to launch in November at the RGS, but in January 25, we'll be retracing the 26th journey on foot by camel all the way down, putting the spotlight on these incredible hotspots. The Nubian ibex, more than 100 of these beautiful animals still remain. A lot of them are radio collared, so we know that men wander off far more than the ladies. I'm going to make any comments on that. And I'm just feeding back to you what a scientist told me earlier this week. The Arabian oryx in Yaluni, the unicorn of the desert, which if it turns sideways on, gives you the idea why they thought it might be called the unicorn of the desert. Shipwreck after shipwreck. And if you've got a good memory, just remember that name, BALPO, and then the number 1, and Google it. Try and work out the story behind that. So you can park your car next to untouched shipwrecks, which tell an extraordinary tale of stranded Somali and Kenyan sailors on the coast of Oman. It's real boys' own swashbuckling stuff. And now we're all the way down towards the beautiful Dauphin of Salalah, which is more African than Asia. It is quite spectacular. Weaver birds swinging under the trees. And the reason is because these high mountains, the wind blows over the sea in July, it rises, cools, and we have 3 months of what we call Kharif, the monsoon, which makes these mountains turn as green as Glastonbury Festival, minus the mud and mud on it. But an extraordinary place biogeographically. over 1 million people visited Solana this summer, but not many of them from Europe, mostly coming from other Arab states. You cannot believe that Arabia looks like this. It is quite spectacular. The camels that graze the slim pickings of the plateau in the summer come down and they fill their boots for 3 months in the greenery because as soon as those clouds do burn off in September, these go pretty brown and pretty dry, and the kharif is over. Once again, we don't know how climate change is going to affect the kharif. It used to penetrate much further inland, but that's an area of study. But what we do know is that this is the one place where you find this fantastic tree growing, which is frankincense. And so the frankincense trees, this is the resin, and it's not just someone like me going around with a penknife. There's real art to harvesting frankincense. But if this book doesn't really tick the box for what you want to get someone for Christmas, then maybe this does, the Amiraj of the Omani perfume, which uses frankincense as a key ingredient to make it a unique, high-value perfume. But Dhofar has everything, really. The sand gazelle, the Arabian leopards, striped hyena, porcupine, the hyrax, if any of you have been to Mount Kenya or Kilimanjaro, the hyrax you find there, we find in the fifth on the southern Oman. And we've looked at the oldest living thing in Oman, which is the juniper tree. This is the largest living thing on land in Oman, the baobab tree. We don't have many, not quite Madagascar, but about 13. And they're all in Wadi Hana, a beautiful, beautiful place in southern Oman. But wherever you go, whatever you look at, you will always be engrossed by the warmest, friendliest people you will ever meet. And it's really that combination of place and people that makes Oman utterly unique. Good. Thank you for listening, Mark. Sorry,
Probably carry on listening to Mark for hours and hours. The stories are just amazing. We are going to have a Q&A session later on this evening after Mark's taken us through the Wild Frontiers programme. So hold those questions. You'll be able to speak to both Marks, and obviously Nigel will be standing up later on just talk about his talk with the RGS on mangroves and the waterways of Oman. So very, very special. So Mark, shall we? I'll pass over to you. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Can I just check how many people here, just by show of hands, have been to Oman? Okay, so for those that are watching on Zoom and can't see, that's probably about 30%. How many people haven't been but have booked to go to Oman? Nice, about another 10 to 20%. Fantastic. Okay, we can find, I can imagine, so I do not have expedition experience within Oman. But my first time in Oman was 25 years ago, when I had slightly more hair and my beard was definitely not the colour that it is now. And there is a photograph of me in Oman looking 25 years younger. I probably considered myself much more of an adventurer than I actually was back then. There we go. So in total, I spent the better part of 6 months in Oman at that time, and then I went back a few years later and spent another 3 or 4 months in Oman. And it wasn't the first Middle Eastern country that I'd been to. Before, I had been to Jordan, I had been to Egypt. So I remember my very first impression of arriving in Oman, and I was expecting the usual chaos at the airport. This is what I was expecting. I was expecting noise. I was expecting people to be offering to take my luggage. I was expecting someone to be offering to take me to their cousin's hotel and offering me everything under the sun. And that wasn't my experience at all. The airport was calm, it was clean, and it was quiet. And it really threw me off from the levels of concentration that I'd had from my arrival. And I remember going outside looking for my transfer driver. And this is pretty much what I was expecting. Maybe not quite this level, but very much this type of car and a slightly shady character coming to pick me up. And instead, I got met by a perfectly clean, beautiful car, a well-dressed driver. And I actually learnt that it was illegal in Muscat to have a dirty car. The cynic in me thought, I wonder if there's a minister somewhere who's got shares in a car washing company somewhere. But again, it just threw me off and thought, this is not a typical Middle Eastern country. And as I was driving from the airport into the centre, I was expecting to see, men in westernized clothing sat around in cafes. Far from it. The vast majority of people that I saw were wearing traditional dish dashers. And Oman was a very different Middle Eastern country from my previous experiences, and it got me wanting to understand more about it. So if you bear with me, I will just give you a very brief potted history, my understanding. This is just my take on Oman and how it's come to be the wonderful country that other Mark has introduced us to. So when you go back in time, the first notable civilization that controlled the lands that we call now today is Oman was the Akkadian Empire. It's actually based in Mesopotamia in modern day Iraq. And that was founded by a gentleman by the name of Sargon. It sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings. Sargon flourished about 4,500 years ago, and he came after the Sumerians, and they used the same script, the first script, cuneiform, to record all of the dealings that went on. Now, that Akkadian Empire fragmented, and the part that became Oman was called the Magan Empire. And the Magan Empire was a seafaring nation, and they traded heavily with the east coast of Africa and with India. And because this was during the Bronze Age, does anyone know what are the two component metals that form copper? That form bronze? No prizes for that. Tin and copper. And in the north of Oman, you have plentiful supplies of copper. So this was a hugely valuable resource. They also traded in spices. But as the Bronze Age moved more into the Iron Age, this was not a mineral that was found very much in Oman. And that could have seen an end to the great wealth that it had experienced. But luckily, as Mark has shown you, in the south of the country, they had this tree, which was the frankincense tree, which became one of the most valuable resources at the time. And the classic story is, the gold, myrrh, and frankincense that was given to the baby Jesus. The gold wasn't really worth that much. It was really the frankincense and the myrrh that were much more valuable. Why? Well, it's got a nice smell, but it also has got lots of natural oils. It's got healing properties, and it formed a critical part of temple culture. So it was highly sought after in the temples of both Egypt and Rome. So a very, 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 very valuable resource that made the Magan Empire one of the wealthiest people of their time. Now, this wealth did not go unnoticed. And just to the north, the Persians, the Achaemenid dynasty, sought to take over the Magan Empire, which they did. And they used some of the wealth from this trade to build their capital at Persepolis in modern-day Iran. And there's still Persian influence which can be found in certain parts of Oman today, but ultimately that was displaced by Arab influence, and that happened in two key waves. The first was when this is the Great Dam of Marib, which was one of the engineering wonders of the world, dating back to the 8th century BC, and it's in southern Yemen. And a lot of prosperity surrounded the Great Dam. But when it collapsed in around the 2nd or 3rd century, a lot of the tribes from that area migrated to other parts of Arabia. And it's said that one of those tribes was called Omani, and they gave their name to the land today that we call Oman. The second big Arabic migration came with the growth of Islam. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole history of Islam, but needless to say, 622, when Muhammad fled Mecca to go to Medina, 10 years later upon his death, as you can see from the map here in pink, Oman, or at least northern Oman, formed some of those early lands that were occupied by the newly found Islamic Empire. And everyone talks about Sunni and Shia. And actually, this is one thing that I learned when preparing for this talk. Oman doesn't belong, their form of Islam doesn't belong to either the Sunni form or the Shia form. There is a third branch called Khariji, and it's the Ibadi form of Islam that is followed in Oman. And without going into huge amounts of detail, my understanding is this means they don't follow tribal loyalties, they don't follow hereditary loyalties. It's very much a meritocracy. And the best person for the job is the person that should be the leader. But in the early days of Islam, they were ultimately conquered first by the Umayyads, who were based in Damascus, and later by the Abbasids, who were based in Baghdad. And it was during this occupation from Baghdad, the Abbasids, that the legend of Sinbad comes to fruition. Now, Sinbad was mentioned in 1001 Nights, and in the original telling, he's actually from Basra in modern-day Iraq. But over the years, the Omanis has very much taken him on as their own, and they say that he comes from Sohar, which was a very, very important port in the north of the country. And Sinbad is still very popular today in various manifestations, some more PC than others. And if you fly with Oman Air, then you can actually log on to your Sinbad account, and I found out you can earn Sinbad miles as you travel with Oman Air. Getting into more modern times, it was the Portuguese that cast their eye on Oman, and they occupied Oman in the year 1507. They built a couple of forts, which can be seen today around Muscat, but they used it more as a way station en route towards India. And the Omanis eventually kicked them out in the year 1650. They then signed treaty with the British, but quite different from maybe some of the other treaties that were signed. They kept their independence. It was much more of an alliance. And as has been said, that relationship continues to this day. But I think having looked at what the Portuguese were doing, interesting, looked at what the British were doing with empire, they decided, and as Mark has said as well, they decided to create their own empire. And as you can see here at its largest extent, it went into today what is parts of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, and many countries in East Africa. And if you've ever been interested in the history or the history of Africa, I cannot recommend highly enough this book, The Scramble for Africa, which talks about the whole European 19th century obsession with Africa. It talks about the British Empire, it talks about the French, talks about the Belgians, the Italians, the Germans, but it also talks about the Omanis. And Oman was the only non-European country to have an empire in Africa. That all stopped in the year 1856 with Sultan Said. He decided upon his death to divide the empire between one son based up in Muscat and another son based down in Zanzibar. And with time, that meant that the son who was based up in Muscat lost some of the wealth that was generated from Africa. And ultimately, Oman found itself actually almost as two very distinct lands. There was coastal Oman, which was known as Muscat, that was ruled by a sultan from Muscat. And then almost separate from it, there was an interior Oman ruled by an imam from Nizwa. And generally, coastal Oman was outward looking, was very much under the influence of the British, whereas the inward Oman was much more conservative and much more suspicious of foreign powers. That all started to change in the year 1938, when the Sultan Said bin Taimur, in conjunction with the British, decided to try and unify the country by taking on the slightly xenophobic imam based in Nizwa, Ghalib bin Ali. And it was the backdrop to the struggle between these two gentlemen that saw Wilfred Thesiger's travels in the late 1940s traveling through. And he talks about risking his life when traveling from the fairly safe coastal areas into the much more dangerous interior in Nizwa. Needless to say, Sultan Said bin Taimur was successful and united the country, and you may have thought that this was then a time for progress and to see lots of modernization coming. In fact, in the 1950s and the 1960s, Oman to some extent stagnated. The Sultan was quite conservative. He forbade radios. He wasn't a big believer in education. And when the rest of the world was seeing cultural phenomena like Beatles and technological advances like the landing on the moon, it said that in 1969, Oman had just 6 miles of tarmac road. And the capital, Muscat, was like a medieval walled city that was locked at dusk. This couldn't continue. And ultimately, in 1970, his son, Sultan Qaboos, in conjunction with the British, led a bloodless coup and remained in power for 50 years. And as Mark has said, was very much loved and respected, not just in Oman, not just throughout the whole region, but I'd say throughout the world because of this neutrality. And where I think Sultan Qaboos was also amazing is he realized that Oman doesn't have the same oil resources as some of the other countries in the Gulf. And he knew that if Oman was going to succeed, he had to look at other options. And one of the things that he introduced was very much getting Omanis to work. And while you will have expats, as you said, kind of many British living there, you'll find Indians, you'll find Filipinos, you'll find a smaller percentage of expats in Oman than you will find in some of the neighboring countries. And that's very much due to Sultan Qaboos, who died in 2020 and has now been succeeded by his cousin, Haytham bin Tariq, who is the current Sultan. So that's just a very brief potted history of Oman up until today. I'm now going to show you how you can travel there if you don't have 56 days disposal at you to cross. So in just 12 days, I'm going to use, this is one of our most popular group tours that starts in Muscat and takes you right the way through some of the beautiful mountain scenery along the coast through 2 of the stunning deserts and right the way down to the green area in Salah. So what can you see? Now, Muscat itself, for me, is a very unique capital. It's divided into lots of different districts, many of them divided geographically by mountain ranges like this that you can see. The oldest part is called Muscat, and this was the part that was a medieval walled city that was locked under keep. There has been some modernization, but you will still get this very old feel to it. And it's here that you will find not only the Portuguese forts, but also the royal palace, the Alam Palace, which I think is wonderful. I think it's much more beautiful than Buckingham Palace. It was only built in the early 70s. But what I like about it is on the gates to the palace, you can actually see one of the endearing emblems of Oman, the Khanjar, which makes its way on to the flag as well. Neighbouring Muscat, you've got another suburb, which is called Mutra, and this is centred around the Corniche. And one of the things that I remember very fondly from that is in the early evening, people would walk along the Corniche, very much like the Italian passeggiata, and it's a really lovely feel. It's also home to probably the best souk in the city, and it's a great place to go souvenir shopping and to buy spices and really just to meet the locals that you'll find there. We also go and visit in the early morning. There's a great fish market, and that's one of the highlights of Oman, eating some incredible fresh fish. Near the airport, this is one of my favourite mosques. It's not an old mosque. In fact, the first time I was in Oman, it hadn't been finished built. It was only finished being built in 2002, the Sultan Qaboos Grand Mosque, but it is beautiful. It may not look like that much from the outside, but the intricacy of the woodwork and of the tiles and ceramics inside, it's stunning. It's got a capacity of 6,500 for worshippers, and the carpet inside is Persian. It's one piece, and it took 2 years to make. From there, we jump into 4-wheel drives, and we start to head south through the wadis, through the dry valleys, up into those beautiful mountains that Mark has shown us pictures of. Some of the villages are inhabited, some of them aren't. And some of my favorites is Al Mitzvah, which is built into the rocks. You've got Al Hamra, which is very reminiscent of some of the Yemeni multi-storied mud brick architecture that you can find. And then there's other villages like Birkat Al Moz and Tanuf, where you can see the Falaj system, which was actually a system of irrigation that they learned from the Persians. From there, you can go up to the highest peak in Jabal Shams, and this has only been open for a few years. There's a beautiful walk now called the Balcony Walk that you can walk along for about 3 or 4 hours. It's about 6 kilometers in total. It's an old donkey track, and it gives you a phenomenal opportunity to really enjoy the mountains. Then on the other side of the mountains, what once was a very dangerous place to visit, and especially in the late 40s, early 50s, now is not at all. But Nizwa is a great place. There's a weekly market. Oh, that's jumped forward quite a few. It is also a great place to start seeing some of the forts for which Oman is rightly renowned. There's about 500 forts in the country. If you're wondering why so many forts, well, partly because of all the foreigners that are trying to invade, but also tribal conflicts over the years. This is the 17th century Nizwa fort, right in the centre of Nizwa, and until the creation of the airplane, it was impregnable. Nearby, you've got the largest fort in the area called Bakhla, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but probably the most ornate is Jabrin, which was built originally as a palace. And inside you can see not only the beautiful details, but you'll see some of the methods by which people would defend it. And the one that I remember the most is gaps where you could pour boiling date juice over potential invaders. It's also renowned for its beautiful painted ceilings. Leaving here, we go via the market town of Sinan, and then we do go into the Wahiba Sands, which you've already seen some pictures of. It is breathtaking, it is beautiful, and if you're doing the Oman adventure, this is your first night of camping wild. And if you've never camped wild in scenery like this, you're in for a treat. It really is beautiful and much better than a wet weekend in Dorset. From here, we head to the coast and just gradually start making our way down the coast. Stopping off, seeing fishermen along the route, and again, camping wild the second night right on the coast. We then got one night in a hotel, and then we, after watching some of the sunsets, we then head inland into the Rub Al Khali, the empty quarter. And here you need a minimum of 2 vehicles in order to be safe, and it really is spectacular wild desert. And we may not be traversing on camels, we may not be walking through it, but there is still ample opportunity to have time to enjoy the tranquility, to camp wild in the middle of the desert and enjoy, as Mark said, some of the finest skies you'll ever see. From there, we head south, and yes, there is the legend of Ubar that Mark has already mentioned. This apparently is an artist's impression of what it would have looked like back in the day. These days, it looks slightly smaller, but it is still, the legend of it is still incredibly impressive. And again, just to realize that while it's the empty quarter today, it was actually at some stage part of major trading routes. Then we come down to the south, the green area, and down to a place called Sulhuram, which is only just outside of Salalah. And while today it's a very peaceful place with some very romantic ruins, this was once one of the world's busiest ports when it was exporting frankincense all over the world. And there is a frankincense museum to go along. So if you have 12 days and you enjoy camping, I think this is the best way to enjoy the variety of Oman. If you don't have 12 days, or if you don't do camping, as I know some people don't do camping, you can actually get an incredible variety. You get coast, you get desert, you get mountains, you get forts within 9 days, and you're never more than a day's drive from Muscat. So this is another option that we offer. And from here, in addition to seeing the mountains and the forts, we go via the Billa Sinkhole, which is a limestone feature similar to what you've been to Mexico, Yucatan, the cenotes there. There's Wadi Shab, where you can go for a dip. And then we go on to the dhow building town of Sur, which is lovely. It's very tranquil on the coast. And then you do go to the Wahiba Sands, but rather than camping, you can have something a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more practical for those that want. So that's another option. For those of you that don't know that much about Wild Frontiers, our group trips have got a maximum of 12 people. And on the group tour, generally we're staying in very comfortable accommodation. And if you're doing the Oman adventure while camping, which we do for 4 of the 11 nights, is a real treat. Food-wise, and Mark may disagree with me here, fish was fantastic. There are some locals, local dishes. You've got opportunities to try goat. You've got influences coming from India. You will eat well, but Oman isn't considered one of the world's greatest cuisines. So you will enjoy yourself and you will eat well, but I don't know if you'll be rushing home to buy recipe books to do Omani special, though Oman may, with Mark's experience, may be able to contradict things. Drink-wise, coffee very much is very popular there. And taken together with dates is a classic Omani experience. With regards to alcohol, it can be found, but only in particular places, and it's very expensive. So I would say if you like a tipple, it's worth bringing in a little hip flask or something to drink in the evening, especially in the desert. Flying there, you've got options to fly direct with Oman Air, and if you want to fly indirect around the Gulf, you've got all these options as well. Visas wise, it's very easy. You can stay 14 days visa free in Oman, making it very easy. Lastly, for those of you that don't want to do group travel, we do tailor-made. This rather dashing young gentleman is stood over there. That is our tailor-made specialist, Dan. And Dan can put together you tailor-made based on any of the trips that I've shown you. But in addition, you can do snorkeling options north of Muscat. You can go out to see the turtles. You can go up to the stunning fjords of the Muscat Peninsula, or you can arrange quite exclusive options on the beach or in the desert. And if you are going tailor-made, you've got a real treat in option open to you if you want to explore some of the accommodation options, from the Alila, Jabal Akhdar, and the View, to the Chedi Muscat, to the Six Senses at Ziggy Bay. And there's some atmospheric accommodation in Niswa, such as the Niswa Heritage. And finally, I would just echo what Mark said. It's a fantastic place, Oman, not just for the scenery, but also for the people that I found incredibly friendly. And I still remember 25 years later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Mark. I think we might ask Miriam to see if we can get the video going. I'll put you on the spot and see if we can get the 3-minute video if we go. Amazing speeches. I think you're pretty much, I'm hoping the video does work because if it does, I actually love the food, Omani food, so I'm going to disagree. I'm going to have to. And the reason I love the Omani food is because of those trading routes, the influences that come in and the spices. I absolutely love them. And then, so you can go from India through the Arabic and the shur, the goat that is actually cooked in the sand is truly amazing. And the Omani is very proud people, so sure we might get a question tomorrow. But we're going to try the video. I think it looks like that. Let's give it a go. And then just think of some questions, because we'll open the floor up after this 3 minutes video. Yeah, open the question up to Mark some questions. That helps because you encapsulate everything in video. And honestly, we're sitting here tonight, maybe speaking for the last hour or so, there was so much more to talk about. We could go on live, but everyone's time limited, but I'm sure we could answer some questions. So I'm going to throw it over to the floor. We've got people online as well. We're going to throw a few questions. Do we have any questions from the floor at all for Mark and Mark? Mark, do you want to come back up? If you've got any questions, please do raise your hands. Are we okay? Have we got any online at all?
You said the turtles are at risk now. Why is that when the empty court is so pristine?
Well, I think because you.
Mark, should I ask you to
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
The answer is huge, isn't it? I mean, there's no one in the empty quarter, so that's why it's pristine. I mean, sadly, the coastline is it's like everywhere. You know, I paddle my kayak up the northwest coast of Scotland. The rubbish on the strand line on the beach is dreadful, and it's that not that much different in Oman. Oman has the same challenges that we do in that respect, but there's a lot of increasing traffic of vehicles on the ocean, disturbance on the beaches. Lights on land, which make them the young migrate inland rather than out to sea. So there's a whole host of challenges, but there's great hope still. They're a fantastic. 18 years ago, when I first went to Oman, I would really struggle to find a young Omani working in anything connected to the environment. Today, it's totally different. There are dozens of young Omanis doing fantastic work. There's a wonderful organisation called the ESO, the Environment Society of Oman, that's also great work. So things that, there are challenges, but there's great hope. I think tourism has a key role to play in terms of communicating also to the Omanis the importance of what they have, looking after their heritage, natural heritage. And I think Nigel's lecture here every year is a great opportunity and a great platform for young Omani specialists to come to UK and to talk about the valuable work that they're doing. And that's what we'll be doing on our journey with the Recruitment Expedition year after next is journeying from these hotspots, interviewing, podcasting with the young Omanis doing that work and trying to inspire the next generation. So challenges and threats not dissimilar to here really, but great hope, Mark, for sure, because of the young people coming through and because of the enlightened view of the Crown Prince and the government. Oman's trying to decarbonise its economy. Great hope of green hydrogen and renewable energy. But all of that also has an impact on the environment. So it's great that the environment and development of the economy are being discussed at the same time. There's still a partnership and it's an opportunity for everyone to really get it right. So challenges, but great optimism and hope as well.
So,
Yeah. Question.
which Mark are we going to
Just quite agree. Live there for years. Quite agree. Over. Why do you think that is? Is it something that has been passed down about politeness and talent? Is it a natural thing, maybe inherited? Do you got any idea why they're so nice and why they stand out and did something like
Sorry, can I just summarise the question first, rather than so they can.
So the question was, everyone seems to be in agreement that Omanis are very nice. And the question is, why? Is there actually a reason for that? I'll be interested, Mark, whether you've got my opinions. When I was there, I felt that it was very much as a consequence of Sultan Qaboos and the culture that he had engendered. And anyone that's worked in an office knows that there is, while it may be comprised of lots of different individuals, there is a culture which is set by the leader of that. And I do think that the way that he treated and was viewed as treating his people, but also the neighbours as well, of just this conciliatory, not taking sides and being respected. I think people felt real pride in being Omani as a consequence. And I think that led to, just a very happy people. That was my experience.
I wouldn't disagree with that. It's I think it possibly goes back even earlier. I think it's connected to that maritime trade and the fact that having lived in Riyadh in the 90s when it was very insular and very hard to integrate with local people. The Bedouin of the Central Arabia are very much inward looking, but I find that the Oman is very outward looking and accepting of difference and different cultures and different perspectives. And my belief, Mark, is that that's very much connected to maritime trade, to the exposure to the African culture, exposure to the Eastern Asia culture, which is pretty much economy food. As a nation whose national dish is chicken tikka masala, I don't think we Brits are very good at commenting on other countries' food, but I'm with you. I think Omani food is pretty special. But I agree, it's the menu is limited, but what there is absolutely.
I think it's really important. It's a really good question. The whole thing about Oman is it is very multicultural. It's been accepted for centuries. Those trade routes coming in and out. And that embodies the people and the culture, and I think it does embody that food as well. And they are extremely welcoming people. Every single comment I have, the first thing, it's very rare you go, and I've travelled the world like lots of you have probably. Especially turn around, the first thing people say, people. And that's before we talk about the geography and the wildlife. Oh my God, I've gone for hours. But that's how warm and welcome it is, and it's a very, very safe country to travel. So the lady there in blue.
You've told us what a lovely place it is and how lovely people are. My concern is that it sounds as though tourism is growing. And I got very depressed lately when I've seen the results of mass tourism to places that are, wild, desolate, in the depths of nowhere. And tourism ruins it. Do you not have a worry that all this will ruin the north?
I think it's a global issue. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Sorry about that. The lady's asked about really tourism pretty much impacting Oman. We talk about Oman's beauty and its people. Will the influx and the growth of tourism, affect what we're talking, all the positives we're talking about now? And I think it's a very, very good question, and it's a question at the moment, to be honest with you. It's a global issue. I've been at a big show in London today, World Travel Market. Lots of global executives have come across from all over the world to talk about that, and it's very important. I think the Omani leadership and the government recognise that it's not a mass market. There are neighbours who have huge numbers of aircraft coming in, feeding pastures, and that does affect the local culture, and you don't actually look at it. That is not a demand. The government has set forth that it needs to protect its heritage and its culture. Yes, there will be growth. There may be elements of impact, but that's going to be lessened. So if you're looking to develop properties on that, you look at the local community. The community has to actually work. Can you put that money back into the local communities as well, so they can actually prosper and grow? But it's got to be done in such a way that even from an architectural perspective, it's not going to be a great monstrosity that's built high rise. When you go to Muscat, one of the things, it's not a high rise city at all. It's not. It's very low rise and very, very spread out. And it lends itself back to, even in terms of architecture, you look at Arabic symmetry, take those lines. If you go to other destinations in the Middle East, and I won't name names, but you think you could be anywhere in the US or the UK, to be honest with you. You don't. When you're actually in Oman, you see that because they're very, very proud of their monster. So I think it's a brilliant question. And it's something that we need to be very aware of, all of us, and we need to look at our impact about what we do when we travel as well, because do we travel less? Should we travel longer? You know, these are all questions that we need to have, and I think the Omani government is actually trying to answer that now, trying to have a solution. They're not looking at mass markets, so they're looking at the benefits of travel. So the lady at
Say
the back.
something about the role of women in Omani society, please.
Yes, I think so. Women have very high positions in government. They do. We've seen that through, and it's part of the Omani culture that women are actually embraced. Today, well, travel markets, I was there. A lot of the senior tourism leaders are actually women on that one. So women have very, very equal right. I'm actually very. Should I actually throw that open to you? Actually, I'm not putting you on the spot. Did you want to comment about the role of women at all in Oman? I'll put you on the spot there. I'm actually embarrassed over here at all. But I think generally, from my experience, women are embraced and are allowed. You hear lots of stories in the Middle East, and it's not like that at all in Oman at all. Very much a case of equal rights in Oman.
No, I would agree with everything that you said on that point. Women are definitely a major part of all aspects of Omani society, whether that be in business, in tourism, in government, so across all areas.
Yeah, Oman.
Yeah, I mean, I employ 46 people, I think, and the women drive the organisation, no doubt about it. Sultan Qaboos University, which is the foremost university, the women, the girls outperform the guys quite substantially academically as well. I mean, the future of Oman is really driven by incredibly empowered, hardworking women. It's great to be part of that culture. The Minister of Education is a lady, Dr. Mahika. If you ever have a chance to sit with her, she blows you away. The Minister of Higher Education is a lady, blows you away. Incredible. The Undersecretary, one of the main ladies, probably with you at WTM, Hajra, just Asma Hajra, just an extraordinary lady in the Ministry of Tourism. There are countless examples of great young Omani ladies doing great things and shaping the future of this country. Going back to the comment about tourism, I mean, I do take the point. I used to live in Nairobi, and I used to go camping in the Masai Mara, and I liken the next door neighbours to Oman as the Masai Mara, mass tourism. Every animal surrounded by about a dozen vehicles. If I was cheeky at dawn, I could ford the Sound River and I could drive my car up into the city. I wouldn't see anyone today. And that's the reality of pretty much what it's like in most of Oman. If you go beyond the capital, you really won't see anywhere. What I liked about your tour markets is you really are exploring those wilder frontiers of this extraordinary country. But my friend Abdullah set up the first permanent desert camp in the 1980s. It was a real visionary for Omani. You were poets, we disappeared into the dunes every night and talk and chew the fat. And his desert camp is still running today, 1,001 night camp, run by his daughter, by the way. So it's run by an Omani lady. And it creates employment opportunities, not full time, but it creates employment opportunities for over 40 Bedouin people, dancers, musicians, poets, singers. So tourism brings huge benefits, but like you said, we have to be very aware of the negative side. And I think Oman's got that balance just about right.
Anyone? Just lady there. Just...
Would I be able to travel on my own in Oman as a lady?
I would say yes. I mean, I'm saying this as a man, to be honest with you. Sorry, I do. Yes, sorry about that. The lady asked if she would be able to travel on her own in Oman. Okay, yes, absolutely safe. Oman is one of the safest countries in the world. I've actually spoken to women who have travelled on their own. I think, Mark, you have as well. Oh, sorry, I'm sure with that. But yeah, it's perfectly safe. Quite often you'll take a guide, like Toman said, you can travel on your own, you can travel in a group. Absolutely no issues on that front at all. Mark, anything to do? No, perfectly safe. And I think regularly voted United Nations as one of the safest countries in the world. Any other questions?
Any particular advice and dress code for women?
Islamic country, so obviously conservative on that side of it, particularly if you're going to visit the mosque, that side of it, mosque on that side of it. So you need to obviously cover your shoulders and obviously your knees on that front. Muscat is quite an open city, so it's a little bit more informal in terms of Muscat. If you're going to go to someone like Niswa, it's more formal from that perspective. But we always ask people just to respect the local laws, particularly when they enter a mosque or religious area. It's very, very accepting area. Lots of Westerners travel to the resorts. We have lots of resorts in and around Muscat on that side of it, so there are people on the beach and there's no problems at all. Do you have any questions? Any other questions online at all? In a few minutes, in a few minutes, I'll just ask Nigel to come up and just say a few words about his talk that's coming up on these December.
The question is direct from presume, but the question is about cultural and trade connections between Oman and Zanzibar and how those have endured in the kind of modern.
Okay, the question was about the culture between Oman and Zanzibar and how they've endured over time, because obviously that was part of the Omani Empire and it has actually split. I'm going to try and think who's going to be. Mark, you're probably going to be better qualified than I am on that particular question.
Thanks, Rob.
I'll not step back over, don't worry.
What I can say is that the increasing role of tourism, it's probably really in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, that Oman Air started flying direct to Zanzibar from Muscat to reconnect Oman to Zanzibar. So there's a very big Omani influence in terms of tourism. In terms of the trade, the original trade used to be, anyone remember what might have come from Zanzibar to Oman? Spices. What was spice in particular? Cinnamon and yeah, very good. And that still happens, but it's easier to put it in a box on an Oman Air jet than it is to sail it down for 5 weeks up the coast. So that trade still happens, but in a different form. But it's more very much. I think it's quite a lot of investment for Oman to develop a tourism industry in Zanzibar, and Oman Air could fly direct from Muscat. So that could be a sort of bolt-on to your Oman visit. I think it's just a couple of hours flight south to Zanzibar from Muscat.
It is. A lot of people actually. It's actually quite popular as a twin centre since Oman is inside there. In terms of Omanis and the actual culture, a lot of Omanis do actually fly down there. A lot of them have families still. You know, over the years in Dar es Salaam, or they go into Zanzibar itself. And I don't know how many people have been to the Stone Town. It's beautiful. And it does remind you very much of Oman. I was surprised. I think you mentioned earlier on the second language really of Oman is Swahili. You go down to the floor, down to Talala, you'll hear people quite regularly and you think, I've been on beaches near Dar and also that, and you're like, my God, the connection is very, very strong, even to this day, culturally. So, any other questions from the floor or online?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this lady.
Yeah, so the question was employment structure today. Yep, huge challenges for the government. I think 50,000-60,000 young people entering the job market at the end of every academic year. Traditionally, government has been a blotting paper that has absorbed that, but the financial crisis and COVID has sort of tightened the government purse strings, so not many people being recruited into government these days, but there is very much a growing private sector and the policy of Omaniization. So depending on what sector of employment you are in, so I'm in education and training, in which case it's fairly relaxed, but we're probably 95% Omani in our workforce, which is only right and proper. Banking sector will have its own levels. Oil and gas sector will have its own levels as well. But there's huge investment in developing the national talent of Oman. It's got a British influence there as well, Family Business School, the National CEO program, empowering those real bright lights, those diamonds within the society to give them the confidence and the skill set to step up and make a difference. And boy, there's some super talent coming out in Oman there. I said before there are 45,000 Brits. It was much more 10 years ago. But because of this policy of Omanianisation and investing in your own talent, then the need for people like me to be there is much less than it was.
Any more questions from the floor? Just one online, okay? Best time of year? Oh, that's you've got to go, Mark.
I would generally say October to March is definitely your best time unless you really want to burn. It gets very, very hot in the north, or unless you want to join the Northern Omanis and basically enjoy cloudy days in the south in the middle of the summer. But no, October to March is very much the key tourist season.
Just with regards to the weather, I would say when you actually go up into the mountains, the Devils, the temperature does drop dramatically. So what you will tend to find, a lot of people from the UAE will actually travel to the mountains, particularly during the European summer, because you're looking at maybe, 26, 20 degrees up there. And it is, I think it snowed this year. This is just not too long ago. This last winter it was snowing up there. So it can drop because obviously you're at 2,500 meters. With regards to the summer, yes, European summer, yes, it is hot. I wouldn't advise necessarily going into the desert. And one of the other reasons for not going into necessarily the desert during the summer is because the sand dries out, it gets finer. So jeeps tend to lose grip a little bit on that front. But as you can tell, I've got Mediterranean skin. You can tell. I've been there. I've been out with my family in the summer. We stayed on the Indian Ocean, just south of Muscat, and you get a beautiful breeze coming in from that Indian Ocean. So I think it does get hotter, but it's very much different from the Gulf, which is encapsulated in terms of the weather environment. We're on the Indian Ocean, so you do get that breeze. But yes, it is hotter. So I hope that answers your question. I think I might just ask Nigel to step up. Nigel's an esteemed scholar. He's an absolutely wonderful man. And again, he's a very good supporter of Oman. And year after year, he's arranged talks at the RGS. And I'm going to allow him just to quickly update you on his latest venture.
What a lovely evening. Thanks ever so much. I love being here. Ada Al Jabri opened our 2017 talk. She's a marine biologist, and she was going to give a talk about Arabian humpback whale. She got on the stage and had 5 minutes at the RGS. Slip of a lady, but by gosh. She said, I decided I'm not going to start my talk like Nigel asked me to. I want to start by saying thank you to His Majesty Sultan Qaboos for empowering women. And then she showed a slide there with about 40 little pictures of all the things that women are doing. And so it answers the question that there is a real culture. Then she got a standing ovation, then it was easy for her to talk. So each year we have the privilege to invite 2 of the growing generation of Oman field scientists to come share with us here at the Royal Geographical Society their research. This year it's the 7th year under the banner of the Oman Natural Heritage Lectures. And this year we have Aziza Al Adoubi and Badr Al Balushi, 2 mangrove specialists. And so this year we're focusing on one of the great ecosystems of Oman. Mangroves are probably more important than any other ecosystem in Oman because it does 3 things. It protects the coastline when you've got bad weather, provides a home for biodiversity and breeding of fish, and it absorbs carbon. Come along on the 6th of December to learn about the mangrove spots all the way down the coast of Oman. So can I ask you to do 3 things? Could I ask you to take one of those with you when you go? And once you've read it, give it to somebody else. There's a lovely picture of them, the mangroves in the back. The second thing is to click on the site, BritishOmani.org events, where you actually found about today, and buy a ticket. £15, £9 to members of the society, £5 for students, free to Omanis. And if you can't afford that, I'll let you in free. The third thing I'd love you to do is, if you can't come, could you send it to somebody you think might? And even better, buy a ticket for your godson or goddaughter. I promise you, there's going to be a very special moment on 6th of December. We've got about 100 people coming. I want to get 400, fill the hall, and we've got the Duchess of Edinburgh coming too. Anyway, Thank you, guys. So by the way, is there anyone who will subtract the original jokes? I'm very small. A lovely evening and thanks, Rob. Thanks for giving me the chance to plug our 7th Oman Natural Heritage Lecture. Thank you.
We might wrap the evening up very quickly. Again, the British Mining Society is an interesting organisation. So we've got the team here, we've got Rose, we've got Neil, Miriam here. Answer any questions about that. I'd just like to thank you so much for attending tonight, and I hope it has inspired you and answered some of your questions. And so you come out feeling positive about Oman. We're going to be here. If you want to ask us any more questions, please do. But thank you very much.